All right, so we're live, and welcome to Run Wild with Us. Ask Us Anything. I'm Lisa Kastner. I'm the founder and executive editor of Running Wild and RIZE Presses, and I'm here with you on Thursdays between 5 and 6 p.m. Pacific Time, 8 and 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Typically, I'm here with a few of my amazing acquisition and editors and, standard editors. Tonight, I know that we're not going to have Ben White, so I apologize for that. He has another commitment. I'm not sure we're going to get Peter, but again, all good. So, but I'm still here. So, again, you can basically ask me anything. It can be around publishing, editing, the business of publishing, running a small business, whatever the heck you want. You are more than welcome to ask whatever questions you've got. All you have to do to ask those questions is go ahead, go into the comments section, pop your questions into the chat and or the comments portion. And what I'll do is I'll read that question and then I'll respond. So really looking forward to your questions this week. In the meantime, until we have a few questions, what I usually do is any questions that came up during the week or since our last Run Wild with Us, I may bring them forward as a talking point. And actually, we had a couple of really interesting things come up in the last couple of weeks. So first, I'm in the middle of currently doing final negotiations on some contracts that we sent out to a few authors for their manuscripts, and got a couple of really interesting questions in the last couple of weeks that I thought I'd share. So first question that I received was around getting the rights to different copyright. Now, which is interesting. So what you may not be aware of, so let's say you wrote a book, or even if you have a memoir or actually anything, right? And you quote something by another author, or you quote from a movie, or you quote from a TV show, or you quote from a poetry collection. If it is licensed, if it's a licensed work, if it belongs to someone else, then you are obligated to reach out to that individual and let them know that you're interested in leveraging their work within your own piece, and to see if they have, if you have to basically pay for it, right? You have to license it. So we actually have it in our contract. The author is obligated to take care of that for a multitude of reasons. In honesty, one of the main reasons we actually have it in the contract, is so that there's no, misunderstandings, but also because I was actually surprised when we first started Running Wild almost 9 years ago, that there were actually quite a few authors who had no idea that they had to get the right to use other people's work within their own work. I guess they just assumed it was like doing a research project and quoting something by someone else and then referencing it in the back, or they just simply used it and didn't bother to reference the work. So in some ways, it's an education for a lot of authors, and in other ways, again, it's just a way to ensure that we're clear on what needs to occur. Again, to give the right acknowledgement to others for their works. So another really interesting question that I received recently. Sorry, hold on, I'm looking. Oh, Jean says, "Hi Lisa, it's Jean. So excited to be working with Running Wild. Want you to go on Blue Sky too." Hi Jean. Oh my gosh, it's so fabulous to see you. Would love to go on Blue Sky. That would absolutely be phenomenal. So I'll definitely look into that. So thank you. Now, and again, if you've got questions, go ahead, toss them into the comments section of wherever you are, or even like just Jean just did, just say hi. And I'm thrilled to say hi. So another really interesting question that I recently received, like I said, I've gotten a couple. One was around who has final sign off on everything from the cover design, the interior formatting of a work, the final editing of a piece. And I had an author who came forward and he was at first came and said he wanted final sign off on everything. Although we are a small press and we usually only publish between 30 and 40 books a year, which honestly, for a small press, that's a lot of books. If you look up the definition of a small press, it actually is defined as starting at like, I think publishing 5 books a year, but making like $50 million a year, which the second part, I think they're on crack. The first part makes sense to me. Cool. Hey, and we have Peter. Yay. Dude, how are you doing?
Hello.
Hello. You look very serious. I'm assuming that means we've had a serious kind of day.
No, it's a Thursday before Christmas. There's nothing serious about today. How have you been?
Cool. Oh my gosh, I've just been trying to get as much done as possible before the holidays so that I can just, well, honestly, I'll be writing the whole holiday, but but hey, I can sleep in, How about you? What's going on?
Oh, just mad scrambling to get the last minute gifts for Kathy. She says hi, by the way. So got one more to get, and I think I should be good. So, and we're heading over to the other coast for Christmas. So, not much preparation there.
Oh,
so
no way!
I got new glasses today. Can you tell?
Oh, I like them.
Yeah.
Yeah, those
Still
are
getting
cool.
used to them. They're progressives or something. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, these are progressives. When I first got them, it took a little bit, but then now my bifocals, I can't wear them anymore because they just don't. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Totally.
Cool.
So, are you still working on your novel, and when do I get it?
As fast as I can. I've been whittling down. I've found that I've got the same book written in 2 different stories, so I'm gently combining them like as a zipper almost, pulling scenes from here, pulling scenes from there to make them into a cohesive whole. So it's taking some time, but it is happening, and I'm liking the way it's going. So, yes.
Excellent. Oh, cool. I can't wait. That's going to be a blast.
What are you still working on the 3rd book in the trilogy?
I am. So it's so funny. Like, so I wrote out I did a ton of research, and then I wrote out the high level outline, and then I started writing it, and then I realized I was doing exactly what I've done before. Like, I start writing it and I realize there's all this stuff I don't have enough information on to do it like well. So then I go back and start researching again. So I just basically, I wrote 1 chapter, and then I started to write the next chapter, and I went, wait a minute. And so like all this week's been, doing that like follow-up research so that, the next chapter is actually good.
So it gets 2 different parts of your brain, one to write and the other one to research, so that you can create the best product possible.
Yeah, totally. Story. Yeah, and it's so funny because it's like the part of your brain that does it's like the part of your brain that does the writing knows when you don't have enough information to make something really solid. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so it's almost like it like stops and says, okay, no. Like, I will not move forward until you get me, this, and this. And it's like, oh shit. All right. Well, let me go do that. And I know it's going to happen. I'll like get in the middle of like, until I'm like in the throes of it. And I've already developed the backdrop of it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Until that's all on the page, then I'm going to keep doing this. I mean, it's just the way I write, you know what I mean? So yeah.
At any given point, you have at least 4 parts of your mind speaking to each other or battling each other. The one that's trying to write, the one that's trying to research, the one that's looking over from above saying, okay, how's this looking from this point of view? And then your own self going, I'm in the middle of this. How did this happen?
I feel like you've experienced this before.
Been there doing that. Yes, exactly.
That is awesome.
Yep. Part of the fun.
Yeah, that's fabulous. And then on top of all that, we just, as you know, acquired a bunch of stories. Yep. And I have a couple that I want to start working on in January. So I just want to get enough done now that if I do have to step away from it, it won't be such a dramatic restart,
Uh-huh.
Or it won't be, and I know you know what I'm talking about, when like you step away from something and you have to go and refocus on something else. And then when you go back to what it was that you were working on before, it's like you have to go back and reread like at least 20 pages of it, if not all of it. So then you're like, oh, okay. And you've got the voice back, and you've got you've got the tone back, and you've got everything that really made the story is now like alive in your head. And then you can like, and
then it's midnight, you got to go to bed. So
of course. And if you're lucky, you'll wake up and you'll just make some coffee. You can just start, pounding.
Well, you're missed 4 a.m. So I still haven't. I mean, I can't beat that. So,
dude, you don't want to. I was actually on a call today, and a friend of mine was like, what are you going to do for the holiday? And I was like, I'm just thrilled about I get to sleep in and I get to eat fancy food, right? Like I'm at a point in my life that we don't really do like presents and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like we'll put up a tree because that's like an event, like it's fun, Yeah. And like I always, give to charities and stuff like that. But in terms of like, anything that's, I don't know, major, it's really just going to a fancy restaurant for some fancy food and sleeping in. But he was like, oh, then you don't have that internal clock that wakes you up at like, I thought you got up at 4 a.m. I'm like, I do, but sleeping in can be 5 a.m.
Didn't we used to come home around 5 a.m. when we were kids? And so we've still got time before school.
Yeah. Yeah.
In college, yeah.
Yeah, now I get, if I'm up until like 11, then I'll sleep until like 6, something like that, Wow. So, but if I'm lucky, sometimes if I'm up until 11, my brain won't stop. So I was actually telling a friend of mine, like the last several nights I've had problems sleeping. And it's because if I've got a lot going on in my life, it's like my subconscious mind uses my dreams to try and like translate or absorb everything that's been going on, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So, but then they always turn into weird ass stuff. Like last night was zombies, the Olympics. I think it was carrot cake and like a bunch of other, just a bevy of weird, like, what the hell are you talking about stuff? And I'm just really thankful that my conscious mind, like my logical mind, jumps in and goes, oh, that's from this conversation that happened on blah, blah, blah. And so instead of me freaking out about like, oh my God, there's a zombie attack in the middle of the Olympics. My conscious mind goes, no, wait.
So you got a sort of mental referee going on in there, huh?
Yeah, pretty much.
It's safer that way.
Well, thankfully.
Yeah, exactly.
CJ says, hello. With the end of the year coming up, do you keep a reading list or journal? I keep a simple list. I don't know. What about you, Peter? Do you keep a reading list or journal?
This is my to-do wood pile.
Wow.
And I'm still getting through Louise Erdrich's The Mighty Red, which is a fantastic read. I mean, the way she writes so simply and so elegantly that she says, like 4 pages will go by and like 3 things have happened, but you're so enraptured into the story, so wrapped up in the tale that you're just going along with it barely. And she writes it such a way so she takes advantage of the smaller attention spans that we have. So her paragraphs are like a page and a half, maybe 2 pages long, and then move on to the next thing. So I mean, it's a thick book, but it's fascinating reading. I'm making my way through it. Hopefully, be done by the end of the year.
Oh wow, that's amazing. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, anytime that something from her comes out, I buy it. I actually bought a signed copy in Tennessee. I forget the bookstore. Parnassus Books, maybe. But yes, signed copy. I'm like, that's mine.
Oh wow! All right, now I'm gonna have to get it. Although, my reading pile is about like that high next to my bed, and it's as long as my bedroom. And I mean, I slowly get through it, but I'll go through and some nights I'll read, a couple of chapters, and other nights it's a couple of days. Fabulous. It's a couple of pages,
Right.
And like sometimes I'll intentionally go to bed at like 7 or 8, but it's the excuse to read for like 2 hours. You know what I mean? So, but like I don't really have a reading list per se, because I definitely am one of those people that everywhere I go, whenever I go to any retailer that has books, I will most likely purchase something,
Yep.
Because I read everything. Like I read, well, let me change that. And because it's funny, I was thinking about this today. I've always read, as long as it's a great story and it's well written, I'm going to read it. Like it doesn't matter if it's literary. It doesn't matter if it's commercial. It doesn't matter if it's a form of genre. It just has to be a great story and well written. Like, boom, that's it. And I've always been fascinated how in the writing world, there has always seemed to be this, like, I want to say debate, but it's not really a debate. It's like a challenge among the different genres. And I consider literary, by the way, to be a form of genre. That it's almost like, well, if you don't write this, then obviously you don't know what you're doing, kind of thing, right? And I never, like I said, I never understood it, because like I think the strongest writing, hence what you and I have been doing for like the last 6-7 years, is we find just great stories, period. And it can be they're almost, I'd say they're all, even the memoirs are cross genre in some form, right?
Yep.
So like I never understood that debate or that bias, I guess. I think bias is probably a better way to put it. So I don't know.
Yeah. I tend toward, and this was a surprise to me when I first started writing, I tend toward literary without even realizing how I got there or why that's my penchant. But that seems to be the genre I like going for. I just like the character development as well as what's going on in the characters' minds, much more so than the action, which is probably like why I like Erdrich's book so much. Because like I said, she gives great descriptions and goes on and on and on with the characters' imagination, what they're thinking, to get to the point where you're either disgusted by them, cheering for them. And I mean, like I said, one kid just went from his car to the stand at a football game. 5 pages later, you're still learning what's going on in his mind, what happened to him in that period. And he's got something in his pocket for his girlfriend who knows maybe wants to know that she'll say yes, doesn't want to know that she'll say no, that kind of thing. So that's kind of the way I've always leaned. I mean, of course, growing up, I read Stephen King, among others. But I've been, since like 2012, I've been mostly literary focused. It just makes more sense to me. I can play with words and play with sentences and play with structure a lot more. But that's just me being me.
Well, I mean, but interestingly, I mean, I would also argue that like Stephen King is actually more so literary. I mean, I know he's, you know, he writes a lot of cross genre. And there are actually a lot of our authors now who are characterized as being genre, like thriller or horror, or I would even say like some erotica, but it has a lot of it's got incredible character development, so that it's much more complex, and it gives you that depth of that you get with literary pieces. So yeah, not that I'm a snob or anything, but like I am, and I'm good with that. Jean says she loved The Mighty Red. Have read everything by Louise Erdrich. Okay, so now I have to pick up not only The Mighty Red, but also see what else is out there to check that out. So wow, that's very cool.
Yeah, she's a great writer. She really is.
Awesome. So are there any books that we just acquired that you're really looking forward to working on?
I'm actually still backlogged. I actually got a novel to you a couple weeks ago, I think a week or so ago, that that came through rather quickly. I was happy with the edits on that. But the story that I'm working on now, I'm finally in the last 100 pages. I've been working on this. This was supposed to be the last draft. And normally the last draft is a quick skim, make sure I didn't leave any marks in there, leave any comments in there. But I got a lot of faith in this story. So I'm taking a third pass at it, a line edit, as well as a, forget the term, but a line edit as well as questions and comments, because the story has a lot of possibility to it. And I think this pass through could nudge the writer into that next level, which is where I wanted to go. And I realized about an hour ago, I was working on it during the day at work. Don't tell my boss, but the book is 414 pages, double space. Normally that's quite long, 105,000 words. It's too long in my opinion, because the character spends too much time in her own head, and by saying that, I don't have an argument with her spending so much time in her head as much as it's all flat. It's all one level. There's no growth to it. There's no realization of how she's treating herself versus how she's treating other people. I mean, as soon as something happens, she starts beating up on herself. As soon as someone speaks to her, tries to be nice, she starts being a royal bitch to them. It's like there's no growth, there's no development, there's no backpedaling. It's all one level. And the hardest thing I'm going to have to be able to, the hard thing to have to do right now, so to finish the editing, is convey that to the author. I mean, I want her to go into a third deep dive in this novel to crunch it down to about 85,000 words, which is really possible given the expansive amount of material that she has. But it's going to take not a Herculean task, but a lot of effort to get to that point, where she's got to throw away a lot of her darlings and just tighten up the plot that much more, to make it that much more reader accessible and that much more effective as a story and a plot, because it has a lot of potential. She's just scraping on the surface right now. She hasn't really dug in too deep. So
got it.
And then it's December 19th, and I promised another author that I'll start on his book on the 15th. So I've got to get through this one to get to that one, and I got to get through that one before mid-January. So I've got another one that's in line for me. So yeah, I got my place pretty full, and we're not even in 2025 yet. So
got it.
Editing as fast as I can while I'm working on my own stuff, because I have a deadline, and there's a publisher who keeps pressing me that I want to impress and please and get my story to her.
God, she's so annoying.
No. Like every week she's like, "Where's my book? Where's my book?" So it's a beautiful place to be. I'll tell you that right now. Yeah,
I remember when I used to only wish that somebody wanted to read something I wrote. So when you start getting requests for it, it's like, oh my God, of course I'll do that.
Exactly.
It's funny. I also I have one more pass to do on a short story collection, and luckily the author understood the feedback I gave, because I gave her some kind of harsh feedback, but she knocked it out.
Cool.
And then the second round of edits, again, she listened to me, which was I would say amazing, but it's good. And if there was anything that it didn't make sense for the story, she just explained it. It's like, okay, I can see that, and so we kind of worked through it. So I just need to do another read through. And then I'm really looking forward to working on a narrative poetry collection.
Oh, wow.
I just did another narrative poetry collection by some guy named Ben White or something like that. I don't know.
I know that guy.
I know that guy. And it was actually it was super fun. So on that one, I'm really looking forward to him talking about it more the next time we have another Ask Us Anything. And then I have a bunch of others that are like I'm earmarked to be the editor for, which is, it's just one of those, like, I need to remember what's on my plate versus meaning to edit versus what I have on my plate for me to write, so that I can keep it, like I can balance it,
Right.
Oh, and when I was describing when you came on, and this, you might find this interesting, and actually I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. So I'm currently negotiating a contract with an author for a memoir. And he wanted originally to have all these amendments made to it, where he basically has final sign off on the cover, on the manuscript, on everything down to like even the font that's used. And, I came back to him, I was like, okay, like I get your sensitivity around, like, this is a memoir and you're protective of your family, but understand, like, we're a traditional press, right? I mean, we may be small, but you're not paying for anything, like if you wanted to self-publish this, then if you want that kind of control, then you should self-publish, and that's fine. There are plenty of people who've done that, right? But I don't know of any independent publisher or small publisher who would agree to those terms. And all the feedback I've gotten from every author who's worked with us, who's also worked with like a major house, has been, it's one of the most positive experiences working with us, because we are so collaborative, right? So anyone who's watching, if you're not familiar, our process is, our editors will go back to the authors with recommendations, and then, they'll work together on those revisions, exactly what Peter just described, right? And, it's always a dialogue. It's a conversation, right? Like, here's the recommendation. This is why it's the recommendation. Let's talk about, like, what were you trying to accomplish as an author, and how do we get there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, even the cover design, I'd say the majority of publications, unless you're an established, well-known author, you've got no say on that cover, right? You're basically handed it. And we actually go to the author and say, okay, do you have any concept ideas that you would like to bring forward? And, again, I've had a lot of authors giving us feedback on what a great experience that was. So for me, at least, having an author coming to me and saying, I want to have final say. And by the way, he did back off. Like, I explained all this, and he understood. And, when I explained that, like, look, this is a collaborative experience. We're not dictatorial. And by the way, if you did go to the majority of publishing houses out there, they would be dictatorial, right? He got that. But, like, what, Peter, what are your thoughts in terms of, like, that balance of, this is something that someone has created, right? And how much control do they have, or should they have, in terms of things like, cover design and, even the editing process and all of that?
Well, the first word that came to mind is myopic. And that kind of a response or comment or a edict like that means that you're not only hesitant to accept editing or advice or suggestions, you're from the get-go regarding it as an affront. And that's the antithesis of a creative process, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, for him to want to hold on to the creative license to everything that becomes his book is actually potentially missing out on a lot of what could make that book better. I mean, like I tell every author I work with, this is your book. I'm just going to ask questions, make suggestions. You take what you want. You leave what you don't want. That's fine. It's your book. You do with what you want. But I've heard more often than not that these suggestions that I make, the questions that I ask, the authors don't listen to them, adhere to exactly what I'm saying. I don't expect them to, but it could ignite something in their own mind or their own imagination that could blossom and become a much better aspect of the story.
Which is the point. That is the actual point of giving the feedback. It's not that you just blindly do whatever the editor says. It's that you actually think about it, you digest it, and then you come back with something even better. Yeah, totally. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And I think authors who listen to their editors are that much more effective or more more effective writers because of the outside input, which fuels their own imagination and their craft of writing. Now, to be that ironclad, I want font approval, I want cover approval, I want this approval, I want that approval. I mean, this sounds like he's not going to be an easy author to work with, because it sounds like he's going to push back if he's pushing back from this from the very beginning. I'd be wondering how much he would push back during the rest of the process. I mean, has he published with big houses before? Has he been burned in the past? I mean, that's a possibility also. But this is, after all, this is your press. This is our press, and we've been doing this for a while, and we know what we're doing is successful because we have a track record of successful sales as well as awards and recognition. So at one point or some point or another, he or she is going to have to trust the fact that we know what we're doing as well as for what is best for his book or her book, if not the same, a little bit more than he does, because we know more of the market. We know more about the world in which his book is about to enter, if that makes sense.
No, it does. And, it's funny because when we first started having this dialogue around, what his desires were, I actually was really worried about what his response was going to be, because to your point, if he was going to come back and say, no, to me, this is a mandate, right? Or because he admittedly he agreed to changing the language and just clarifying, like, I'm fine with having it in the contract stating that it's a collaborative experience, right? Like, because it is.
Yeah.
So if he wanted to have that added in, okay, sure, that's fine. But I was really, really worried that, like, whoever he would end up working with, it would just be a really, really a big challenge. Because to your point, every author that we've worked with to date who has been similar or had a similar response during at least the contract stage, they have all been very challenging. We've had a couple, the few who actually stopped the editing process and decided they were just going to go off and publish this on their own were the ones who were really that kind of challenging during the contract phase.
Right.
And the ones who came to me and, like, we knew, because a lot of the feedback that we had provided, they ignored and demanded that they were right. And it was like, okay, there comes a point we're going to say, all right, fine, it's your work, so we'll go with it. But they were also the few that demanded that they get submitted to, like, the National Book Award and to, like, all these, like, huge reviewers and acclaim. And I'll be honest, I was afraid for them because I knew they weren't going to get the review that they thought they were going to get. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, I was correct. The reviews were really not good. So, and again, those are few and far between, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, from I almost asked, like, why did you submit to us if this is your, like, clearly you want to have full control, and that's okay. You're allowed to do that, you know, and we're blessed to be in a world right now that the technology exists that you can do this on your own, right? Like, so take advantage of it, right? If that's what you really want, you know, go for it.
Mm-hmm.
But then why did you come to us?
Exactly. If he wants you, she wants that much control over it, fine. Then you have all that control over it. You don't need us. We're not going to be of help to you. So, you know, best of luck on you in the future.
Right. Exactly.
Something similar to this happened to me a couple weeks ago. An alum of the school of my alma mater was looking for some editing assistants with the book he just finished. Now he's a poet, and he had just written a book, just graduated from the program. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm an editor. I've done this, I've done that. I'll take a look at it. And he's fresh out of the program. I think he graduated last June. And I remember what I was like when the first 6 or 8 months after I graduated. I mean, my head was just huge. I was this fantastic author. I had this brilliant future. It's going to happen tomorrow. If it's not happening tomorrow, it'll happen on Wednesday. It's going to happen because this is good. I know what I'm doing. But part of me is like, I get it. He's cocky. He's happy with himself. He knows that he knows a lot more than a lot of other people in the literary world. Unfortunately, he didn't really know how to write prose. I'm sure he's a great poet, but he didn't know how to write prose. So I'm like, all right. So I set up a call with him, and I was actually, I thought I was doing him a favor because, this is my time, and I'll take a look at it for you. But he's asking me questions like I'm being interviewed. I'm like, okay, is what it is. I understand. Show me the first 10 pages. So I spent about an hour and a half, 2 hours going through it, making notes, asking questions, and I'm like, he was looking for somebody that would sing his praises the way he saw his writing to be, as opposed to being affected or changed by any sort of outside input. He wanted to hear that what he wrote was perfect. It was perfect the way it was. He submitted as is. I mean, the writing wasn't even poetic in any way, shape, or form. And he's a poet by his experience and his knowledge or training. So I'm like, okay, you obviously want something more than what, a bona fide editor could do for you. So, say la vie, go on your way. So I had no problem cutting ties with him because I'm not going to force my way into helping somebody that doesn't want my help. It's a waste of my time and a waste of their time. So, just see ya. I have better things to do.
By the way, anyone watching, so Peter is a brilliant editor. He's also a brilliant writer, but he's a brilliant editor. Proven multiple times with multiple books that were named like best of the year, multiple starred reviews. And I personally know, even from my own writing, because like when I first wrote Cure and I had submitted it to Running Wild, I was terrified that Ben and Peter were gonna be like, oh my God, this is complete shit, right? And they both came back and they were like, no, this is solid. Yeah, okay, we can take it. And at the time they didn't know it was me. And so then when I was like, okay, it's me and I want one of you guys to edit it, I was terrified to have either one of you, either Peter or Ben, be my editor, because I know and knew how solid you both are as writers as well as with editors, right? So I actually had Ben as my main editor, and then I asked Peter to read it afterwards. And I still remember when you and I had the call and you sounded so hesitant to give me feedback, but you were so spot on, right? Like, so the two big pieces of feedback he gave me was, I don't have enough description. I'm not setting the world up enough, right? And that I didn't have, the arc wasn't, I guess you could say it wasn't enough growth within the first version. Actually, the version, it was the first version, to really make it blossom. And he was smart enough to point out a couple of sections that were really egregious. And so it forced me to see it. And it went from what, like a 68,000 words, something like that, to almost 90,000 words. Because I slept on it. The next morning, man, I just started pounding it out because it was like I said, all the feedback he gave me, it was so spot on. It just really, and I think it enriched the story. So,
Okay.
and I've been able to take that kind of feedback as I keep writing the series, because I can see it now. Like even the first chapter of the third book in the series, I wrote it, and I'm one of those, like, I clearly, my subconscious mind likes to jump in when I'm asleep and, interrupt my entire life. So I wrote it. I woke up and I went, wait a minute. Cause I'm like rewriting sentences in my head. Right. Yeah, I'm that person. And so I go back and I read that chapter, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm doing it again. Like I'll do like bare bones writing, even though at the time in my head, it sounds like I've developed a world, right? But then when I go back and read it at like 24 hours later, 2 days later, whatever, I can see where it's not as blossomed, I guess you could say, as I thought it was. So like a chapter that was all of, I think it was like 2,000 words is now like 4,500 words, because of, but again, it's because of getting feedback like that enables me to see my weak spots. And by the way, we all have them. And by the way, they change all the time, right? So by the time I'm done this one, I'm sure there's going to be a whole lot more that both Ben and Peter are going to go, no, Lisa, no, you can't. No. And that's how it should be, right? And you sit back and you listen, you take the feedback and you go, wow, okay, all right. No, I get that. That makes sense. So.
Well, writers have to understand that we're not doing this to exercise some sort of vendetta against them. We're not doing this to belittle them or anything. We're doing this to make their words better. And to see us as adversarial is hopeless and actually really unintelligent way of manifesting your story and your literary abilities, because you take what's given you, you let it sift through your mind, and then you put on the page what you get from what comes up in your mind after hearing that feedback, after reading the comments or the questions, because they're coming from an honest place. We're doing, the only reason we do this is to make the story better, to make your words better. So if people can understand that, that's why I say cut bait and move on, because it's just not worth it. I took 2 hours of my time plus 15 minutes to talk to him, and basically I got dismissed. And I'm like, that's my fault, not his. I mean, he's got a big ego. He's gonna say, well, you're not telling me what I want to hear, so I don't want to deal with you. I'm like, okay, go on your way, man. You do your thing, I'll do mine.
Well, and it's funny because Peter, to your point, the whole reason we even started Running Wild was because we all knew a bunch of authors that we knew were fabulous, and they couldn't get a book deal, right? So it was like, so from day one, it was about finding great stories, finding great writers, really helping elevate their stories so that when those stories do make it out into the public, right, they will get the acclaim, right, that they deserve. So it just, that's why we're here. We're not here because it's like, I like to have a big ego and I just want to tell other people what to do.
No, that's 2 doors down. That's not us.
Yeah, pretty much. Another actually interesting question I got recently was, why do we have on the copyright page, why do we actually we acknowledge the editor? Because they're used to seeing the author acknowledge the editor in the author's acknowledgments. And the whole reason from day one, sorry, my cat's, she keeps deciding that she's the center of the world. And so every once in a while you'll see me make her not the center of the world. The whole reason that we make sure to put the name of the editor on the copyright page is because we have control on what goes on the copyright page. We don't have control in what the author puts in the acknowledgments page, because that's the author's acknowledgments. And there have been far too many instances that I know of where an editor was really transformative for an author and the author never acknowledged them. So it's our way of making sure that those authors who did that work got the credit that they deserve. So
yeah.
Wow, we only have 15 minutes left, guys. That's crazy. If you are watching right now, go ahead, pop your questions into the comments section of wherever you are. I will be sure to read it, and then we'll take turns in responding to your questions. Know that next week we will not have a Run Wild with Us Ask Us Anything, because it will be the day after Christmas. And I don't know about Peter, but I don't know that I would be desiring to have a live stream the day after Christmas. It is on the calendar for the week after, which I think is actually January 2nd, if I'm correct.
I think. Mm-hmm.
So we will be here for that one. And with that, so what are you and Kath going to be doing for the holiday? So you said you're going to
her folks. Going
okay.
to Southwest Florida, just above
wow.
Fort Myers. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's 4-hour drive. It's where we used to live, and glad we moved when we did, because Milton beat up that house. We got beat up with Charlie. We got beat up with I forget the hurricane name, but
wow.
Milton overflowed. We used to live on a canal, with big canal, final canal property down there, man-made. And this last one, Milton, the water rose out of the canal high enough to be 8 inches in the house that we used to own. So flooded the house big time. So good thing we don't still live there. But her parents lived well enough inland that they didn't really experience any issues or any damage. So
cool.
Looking forward to it. Yeah. What about you?
I have off Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. Just by default. And I'm just going to sleep in, and I have a reservation at, I think it's called, I have to look it up. I have a reservation at Finch and Fork, which is a restaurant that in the Los Angeles area, and they do like a Christmas buffet.
Yeah.
So I figured, hey, why not? I'll try it, And then other than that, I mean, it's really just, I say I'm just gonna relax, which really means me being me. I'm gonna probably write.
Exactly.
Yeah, and start prepping, for the new year, because we do have so many books that we acquired. I want to say we acquired like 38. I think it was like 38. Yeah.
For both presses?
Yeah, for both presses. Yeah. And then we're going to be announcing another award, thanks to you, that we're going to be launching with another university. I think we're doing the announcement in the beginning of January, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So, but since she hasn't announced it at the university yet, I won't name names, but once that's done. And then tomorrow I actually meet with James, who's the head of Monstrous Books. So we, for those who may not be familiar, so Monstrous Books is this phenomenal independent publisher that they typically get funding through like Kickstarter campaigns.
Mm-hmm.
But he's already won multiple awards, like no joke. Does gorgeous graphic novels, gorgeous, I call it dark fiction because it's more like dark comedic fiction. And so I'm going to be meeting with him literally tomorrow to talk through, like, all right, how are we going to get you guys to market, right? Because again, right now they sell out all the time with the Kickstarter campaigns. But what this will do is it'll enable all of the books to be available everywhere. So wherever our books are available, so will Monstrous books.
Cool.
And IPG sounds really excited. That's our distributor. I sent them our press release about it, and they sent me a note saying, all right, cool. We'll set them up as an imprint. Just like, so Running Wild and RIZE are considered imprints, right? Under Running Wild LLC. So they're going to set up Monstrous Books as an imprint under Running Wild. And so we can start submitting titles like now. So wow. Yeah, that's what I said. But cool. I need to find out, I need to talk through with James, like, so IPG closed out the submission year for 2025 on September 15th of this year. Mm-hmm. So I would just need to figure out with him how he wants to handle, like, pre-existing titles. Like, do we want to make it a new version, right? That could then be come out in 2026. You know what I mean? Versus the ones that have already come out under like completely independently, because I won't have the ability to have them distributed through IPG. I don't know. I hope that just made sense. It felt more like I was blathering, but.
Oh, my question is, does Monstrous Books have the same setup that Running Wild and RIZE do? Whereas they solicit books, they accept books, run them through their editor process, and then they would submit through Running Wild to IPG Books? Is that how it's kind of structured?
We're gonna. I told him contractually we stay completely out of his creative process. Mm-hmm. My understanding is what he does is a lot of the books, like he has a Dead Jack series that he completely writes. He has another one, Pole Check, which I believe he writes, but he has someone else who does, because it's a graphic novel series. Someone else does the images. He has pre-existing vendors to do the book printing, both for his paperback and for his the graphic novels and comics. So what I suggested was stick with the vendors he already has, because they're pre-existing relationships, right? And then we can find out if IPG would be interested and what their costs would be, associated with it, because it would save him a bunch of time, like, because he wouldn't have to ship anything, right? Like like my agreement with IPG is the initial print run, they pass by me, and then I say I either agree or disagree or whatever, and then after that it's really more on a rolling basis. Mm-hmm. But for him, he does a lot of anthologies, if I remember correctly. He usually will he'll stage it, like he'll find a couple of authors that he thinks would be really good in it, and then he'll open the rest up for submissions.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it's more, it's a little more like it fits well with us because it's definitely cross genre, right? He's definitely playing with a lot of different forms. Mm-hmm. But he has it more controlled in terms of who he's publishing. Now, that could change, right? You know what I mean? Like, he may turn around and start doing more open acquisitions, but I think part of it is, it being really more a one-man show with using a couple of different vendors he's built relationships with. I don't think he has the manpower to open it up yet. Is that yeah?
So it sounds like that he is Monstrous Books and he invites other authors to join on his platform, or is it basically just him as the force behind the book, the publication?
He's the force behind the books, and okay. he invites other authors to come and publish with him.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it's mostly him.
It's mostly him. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
And if anyone's curious, actually, I might be wrong. Hold on. I'm looking at this. He does have a submission page. Oh no, I'm not totally wrong. Yeah, what he does is he looks for, based on something that he knows is going to be coming out. He goes out and looks for new content. So he does accept queries.
For an anthology basis or for standalone graphic novels?
Based on this submission guidelines, it depends on what it is. Well, I mean, in one case, he was looking specifically for short comics, right? So if you're looking for a short comic, you're looking for the whole thing, right?
Right.
And then in another case, he was looking for articles, right? So that implies it's just one of, not just, but it's one of many.
How long have you been in business for?
He has been around since like 2020, I want to say.
Oh, wow, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So established. That's nice.
Yeah. And I mean, it's kind of impressive, all of the attention he's already gotten, with only being around for 4 years. So
yeah.
But yeah, no, it should be. Let me see something. He does actually reference a few different people that it looks like he works with on a regular basis on his site. So.
Oh, cool.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I'd say he's definitely in growth mode.
Awesome.
Yeah, so this will be fun.
Is this something you see us doing going forward, like partnering up with other presses?
I think honestly, the reason that we first we did it was a mutual friend connected us because he was having problems finding a distributor, and they already knew that we were with IPG, so it was like, hey, can you give him some advice? So at first it started off almost more like a mentoring, right? Like me basically giving him guidance on, what do you want to, how do you sell yourself, right?
Right.
To get the distributor's attention, like what are they looking for, like all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that he ever they never turned him down, they just never responded. So, or it was like when they responded, they would say, oh, you're still in the running, right? Which means, I don't have anything to tell you right now, basically, right?
Take a number, yeah.
Right. So I was like, you know what? So I sat down and like we'd had a couple of conversations, and I came back. I said, you know what? If you're open to it, you could become a subsidiary of Running Wild, and then that way you can leverage our distribution channels, and we can partner on things like marketing and advertising and all that.
Right.
And resources, right? Because like how he gets things printed and done is different than how we do, and I think we could just learn from each other.
Cool.
So I think as long as I could definitely see us continuing to do this, as long as it's something that it seems like it would be beneficial and really help both organizations in growth and learning, and in providing the best stories, the best products that we can. So
certainly an interesting arm to take on for Running Wild. Graphic novels. I mean, those are all the rage from what I can hear. So
I mean, it would be cool if we had an editor who would be interested in, from a Running Wild and RIZE perspective, basically learning from James, like what does it take to do a graphic novel. Right. I could see us expanding Running Wild and RIZE, and even taking pre-existing stories that we've already published and translating them into graphic novels, right?
That sounds interesting. I hadn't even thought about that. That sounds really interesting.
Yeah, I think that would be very cool, because I think we do have a few titles, that would do really well in a graphic novel format. So he doesn't know this, by the way. I haven't I mean, well, I mentioned to him that we were interested in expanding to graphic novels, but I didn't ask him yet if he would be willing to mentor someone. But yeah, again, I think it would be very cool, a really smart expansion. So
Terrence Hawkins' name came to mind about turning some of his short stories into those graphic novels with his wild imagination.
hey man, gotta do it. Wow. Well, and with that, we've hit the bottom of the hour, the top of the hour. I don't know,
Top
both.
of the hour.
Top of the hour. As always, Peter, fabulous to catch up.
Absolutely.
Next time we just need to get Ben so then we can banter a bit more ridiculously. So awesome. And Jean, CJ, thank you so much for your comments. Everyone watching, thank you for joining us. Have a phenomenal holiday. Or if you don't celebrate, have a phenomenal days off. If you don't get days off, at least do something to like make it your day. So, and we will see you in the new year. So with that, bye guys.